Hi, everyone. Today on the Writing Gym podcast, we're talking about how to experiment with your writing habit with Fiona Craig. You're going to walk away with specific tips on how to get out of any writing rut that you come across, as well as actionable tips on how to move your story forward.
Welcome to the Writing Gym podcast. We're here to pump up your writing. And now your host, Andy Brixey, personal trainer at the Writing Gym.
Hi, I'm Andy, personal trainer at the Writing Gym. Welcome to Leg Day with Fiona Craig. I'm excited to introduce you to this week's guest, but first, a word from our sponsor, Date with the Muse, where you can get help starting, finishing, and bringing to publication writing in all genres. Enter the contest to win a free hour-long coaching session with our resident coach. Stay tuned for the end of the episode on how to enter. And now I'd like to introduce our resident writing coach, the gal who helps you pump your writing into shape in the Writing Gym. Welcome back to the Writing Gym podcast, Annalisa Parent.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
We are also very glad that Annalisa is here because if you're listening to the podcast, you cannot see, but you should all know that in the midst of a Colorado ice storm and a state of emergency, Annalisa still managed to get internet and do the podcast. So this, ladies and gentlemen, just shows you how tenacious she is. And now to tell you a little bit about our fantastic guest this week. Fiona Craig is a certified NLP practitioner and life coach, certified psychotherapist, and business mentor who has created transformational life coaching packages that will give you the resources, knowledge, and skills to confidently move forward and achieve your dreams and goals. Her first self-help book, Stuck in a Rut, How to Rescue Yourself and Live Your Truth, is a grand prize winner at 2016 Bookvana Awards and an award-winning finalist at the 2016 International Book Awards. We're so excited to have you on the podcast, Fiona.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
So Fiona, you have led such an interesting life. I went to your website and read all about you. You had from modeling, advertising, jewelry design, and now a life coach, psychotherapist, and a business mentor. Can you share with the listeners the story that led you to where you are now?
Well, there's a long story. What part particularly interested you?
It amazed me just the different roles that you held throughout your life. That, how did you go from, starting out as a model and a jewelry designer to becoming this incredibly inspirational life coach who has such a beautiful message? Give us the Cliff Notes version of how you ended up here.
Okay. Well, I write that in my book that I'm half Ukrainian, and so I was very blessed with good skin, and I think my mother, being very excited about fashion and modeling, pushed me into that career. And I did seek all the glamour careers, so that's modeling and advertising and jewelry making. And I was very lucky because they also took me to London, and I worked for Garrard, the Crown Jewellers of London, which was a fantastic experience in my early 20s. And I was studying jewelry and gemology at the GIA Institute. It used to be in Los Angeles, and so that's a lot of fun as well. So I was attracted to those, but there was a sense of no meaning, and I also felt a bit of a fish out of water. So it really wasn't until I came home and was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and spent the first year in bed that I really started to look back on my career and realized that I was influenced more by my mother than I was really influenced by myself. And I really thought, well, what brings me passion and purpose? What excites me? And during that time, I was having some counseling to cope with the chronic fatigue because I was bedridden and then living with my parents. And that's horrible at 27 when everyone around you is getting married and having children. So I really reassessed my life and looked at some of those destructive behaviors that I was engaged in, which was really not looking after my body correctly. Partying. It was the 80s and everyone went to nightclubs and danced and then went to work the next day. And I reflected back to when I was 16. And that was the time where I was really interested in psychology. And so when I work with clients today, that's something that we spend a session really looking back on your childhood passions and what excited you, what are you curious about, and really supporting someone to explore that more. So that was my career rut. So my book, Stuck in a Rut, talks about career, relationships, and life.
I'm so glad that you brought up your book, Fiona, because that was my next question. I really love this idea that who we are in childhood is really the inspiration for what's important to us and what our passion is. So tell us a little bit more about that and how that plays a role in your book, Stuck in a Rut.
Okay, well, in Stuck in a Rut, I do outline that a lot of the beliefs, the childhood beliefs that we grow up with, and we tend to model on our parents, and we swallow a lot of these beliefs that we make sort of truths about the world. And then it's really as an adult to start unpacking that and exploring what would you like to keep and what would you like to give back to your family. For instance, and this mum, I know my mum won't mind me saying this, but I grew up and I was told that good girls don't get angry. So you can imagine every time I got angry, I'd be pushing that down and pushing that down. And then I would blow up like a volcano eventually, but it would also make me sick. And so that's why in my book, I write a chapter called Celebrating No, and about setting good personal boundaries and articulating your wants and needs. So that was a very, very, very destructive belief that I had. So that's what I really invite people. It's always an invitation. I'm not encouraging people to change. I'm inviting them to look at their lives and adopt new habits, new patterns of thinking, new ways of being, and experiment with them and see what works.
So how did you find the courage to put this book out into the world?
That is such a good question. It does take a lot of courage to really step out. I think the first courage was actually getting my website up and getting my face, creating an online presence. And once I had done that for a year and a half, the book was part of the sales funnel. And so it was a lot easier. But still, it was a lot of courage to put myself on the cover. And I was very torn because I know some people say, don't do that if you're an unknown. But the book is about me, a chapter about me and my rut. The book is about how I work with clients. So that's why I felt I would put myself out there and write a book.
Great. And so from that experience, Fiona,
Nope.
I'm sorry.
She cut out a little bit because of the ice storm.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, I think she's back right now. So I'll go ahead and ask the question that I had, Fiona. What was your process like when you actually wrote the book? We always like hearing, and our listeners love hearing about everybody's individual process. Did you outline? Did you not outline? How did that work for you?
Okay. Well, what I did was I did have structure and then an unstructured approach. So there was structure, and within that was creativity. And so this is how I write, and it's from my academic days, the way I write as well, is I start with like a template. So each chapter has a template. It has a what the topic is, a why of the topic, or why we need it, the advantages, the disadvantages of that, the how, and then the what if. And so each chapter theme I then put bullet points. So, and what it is, like, what's a habit, and what is it for? And so that's what I mean. And slowly each chapter started becoming paragraphs. So then I would go about writing a little bit. Then I would go for a walk and I would get inspiration or ideas. Then each chapter usually had 2 client case studies. So I would be putting those in as well. And then I would like to put in quotes. So there's really this mixture of structure and unstructured, because I find that when I do the most mundane things, I get the most inspiration. So I hope this doesn't sound too frivolous, but I'd be washing my hair and I'd go, oh, that's a brilliant idea. I'm going to slot that in this chapter. I forgot about that.
Oh.
So really, I'd be working intensely on one chapter, but then a bit of inspiration for another chapter would come to mind. So I'd go, oh, I'm going to add that in, or oh, no, that's a better quote. So it's, some people would find that rather unusual, but it really worked well for me.
When you had those random ideas in the middle of things, did you have a system of recording them or writing them down? Like, how did you insert them into your book? Because I know that I'll have like fantastic ideas when I'm, sitting at my desk at work and forget to write them down. And I'll get home and be like, I had an idea today, but I don't know what it was.
I know. Well, I love my phone that has Dropbox, which is an app that's connected to Dropbox. And actually, I use this recording device. It's not very editor savvy. So you basically press start and stop. But in the morning, every morning and every afternoon, I walk my dog. And they're the times when I'm thinking about things, thinking about the book. And so I could quickly pick up my phone and start speaking and record that. And so I'd capture any of those thoughts quite easily.
That's so interesting. We've found that in several of our interviews that some of the most inspirational times for writers is when you're not sitting, in front of a computer or down with your pen and your paper. It's the moments when you're out there and you're experiencing life or walking your dog or doing something simple like washing dishes that moment of inspiration strikes. That's very funny. We'll definitely have to put a link in the podcast up to this fantastic app for everyone so that people can, get their hands on it.
Yeah.
So as a life coach, what do you think about, as a writer, there are all these writing groups and various support structures for you as a writer. Did you have that with this book?
Well, I had a wonderful publishing house called Busy Bird Publishing, and they were in Melbourne. And they were really supportive. I wanted to go with somebody that was in Australia, so that if I needed to fly down and visit them, I could.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found that what they were able to offer me, a lot of support for indie first time. The editor was very good, and the conversations that we had, there was enough time. It's always important to set a goal for your publishing date and then work backwards. So I had an intention to write my book because I wanted to be exhibiting at the Australian Book Expo, which is on in October. So that's a big expo, and she allowed a lot of her published authors to share a table with her. So I was able to go on the stand and talk about my book.
That's awesome. So was there any so your publisher was your support group? Because something that we try to offer in our writing gym is the ability for writers to talk to each other and help each other, through rough times. And something that people always struggle with is writer's block and things like that. Did you have any issues with that when you were going through this? I mean, especially setting a goal like that, knowing, it has to be done by this date so it can be finished and I can talk about it. Do you have any moments of frustration like that? And what did you do when you did?
Well, definitely. I wrote a lot of my book in the summer school holidays. Our summer is December, January, February.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a single mum, and my son would go to his dad. So there would be times where I'd have 2 weeks and I would definitely have to get a chapter done in order to meet this deadline. And so there was a little bit of pressure on, and the sun would be shining and all my friends would go, come to the beach, Fiona. And I'd be like, no, I've got to get this. And I remember there was one, and I actually write about it in my book. There's in an incident where I really, really had writer's block. In fact, I write in my book, I'm creatively constipated.
Oh, that's good.
And it's creative spirit is the chapter about innovative thinking. So what I did was I went to the gym, and I write about it as I'm going through this process. I can't think of anything. I've had a cup of tea. It's still not working. I've got this. I'm looking over at my notebook. It's not working. Okay, everyone, I'm going to the gym, and I thought I was going to do a Pilates class, but it was a Zumba class. And I thought, you know what? I've outfit on. I can't be bothered. I'm going to do it. And I've never done Zumba before, and I'm a very goofy, uncoordinated person. I absolutely loved it, and I felt like I was in the middle of this Ricky Martin video, and I'm dancing. The best time of my life. And I thought, my gosh, that's creative spirit, is when you get out of your comfort zone, doing something different. When people are stuck in a rut, they continually do the same thing over and over again, because a habit, it's like for our brains, the superhighway. I mean, why would you take a dirt road when it's do the easy? But in doing the easy and the same thing, sometimes that can get us stuck. So the Zumba freed me up, and I wrote about it all the way through, and how much that helped lift me.
That's really funny. You mentioned your brain waves in a certain way. Annalisa actually studied neuroscience at MIT for a time, and she wrote this whole article about neuroscience and how your brain works when it writes, and how people get stuck in these ruts. Your brain works a certain way, and that is the path that literally, like, the neurons are traveling. But if you put yourself in a different location or do something different and get yourself out of that really comfortable zone for you, it pushes your brain to act a different way, to do something different, and that will force a new creative light into the work that you're doing. So yeah,
that's such a good point. And that also brings me to an earlier question, which I can add a little bit more. There is one chapter of the book, which is the time management chapter, which I actually recorded and had transcribed.
Oh.
So I did hire a transcriber, and I hired this package, and I only ended up doing one chapter, and the beginning chapter. I did my life, and I did, because it was very easy to go the flow from start to finish. But for the other chapters, there were so many other elements that I needed to put in that it didn't work well for me. I'm not somebody that can sit there and articulate a topic very well.
Yeah.
I do sort of segue a little. So that didn't work for me, but I tried it. So when you talk about innovative, trying new things with the brain, I tried the transcribing the whole chapter, and I had it all outlined here on my pad, and I'm talking away on I remember that quite clearly. And it just wasn't comfortable. And I think because I'm an academic writer from the past, it's a lot more comfortable for me to type if it's theoretical concepts I have to explain, because I might want to research and Google. And that's why at the end of my book, I think I've got about 4 or 5 pages of references. I was petrified of plagiarizing. So literally my book, you'll see so many like URLs of various references to other people's content.
That's smart. You talking about recording the chapters and having them transcribed. We actually just did a podcast with an author who did that as well. Her name is Jill. And she wrote a business book, and she did the entire thing, using her phone. She said she went on like a 3-mile walk in Central Park every single day, just talked and talked and talked, and then sent the recordings to a website and had them transcribe them for her. And she said, I'm a talker. What I like to do is talk. So, that's something that works for her. And that's a different way. I think that people get so stuck in a rut, exactly like you write about, of, the way to write is to sit in front of a computer. or, you know, sit at a typewriter or sit with a pen and paper and write. And that's the only way to do it. And people forget, you know, there are other ways that are just as wonderful, and how you work is up to you. Annalisa keeps a writing notebook because she doesn't believe in outlines. She doesn't outline as a writer, and she just writes down thoughts. And as she's inspired, will finish the writing and finish what she's doing. She wrote a whole article about it, about how to keep a writer's notebook and how to put your thoughts and these ideas into it without having to outline. Whereas I am an obsessive outliner. I can't not outline. It terrifies me. I have to like get all my points in, so I have to do an outline. So it goes to show that, you know, there's no one right way to do things. And I think that's something that people get stuck with when they start to embrace writing.
I agree. And it depends what book you're writing, because when I came to writing Stuck in a Rut, I wanted it to be a book that people could take to the beach. So I wanted it to be in a conversational tone and in a style that people could say, oh, I feel like I've just had a coffee with Fiona. And I think that's also part of the why, because the book is to build trust and rapport so that people will then contact me and want to come and work with me. That's behind that.
Yeah.
But it's also just my style. I mean, I'm goofy, and I just wanted to get my personality into the book so that people will go, oh, I really want to work with her.
And that's smart advice to everyone listening. You know, the tone of your book, depending on what genre it is, will be, you know, how people kind of view you. And when you're a life coach or, you know, a business mentor, as a couple of our guests have been, you know, you're not going to get clients or further anything if your book is very dry and uncomfortable, because no one wants to work with a life coach that they can't talk to.
That's right. And I also believe that there are clients for everybody. So I think that it's so important to be yourself. There'll be people that want to work with me because I remind them of their mother, or I might be a best friend, or they might not want to work with me because I've got blonde hair and I'm this. You know, the decisions people make, it's quite fascinating. So I think it's just follow your truth, and this is what I wanted to do. I wrote it for me. I basically also wrote it for me in that I wanted to leave a footprint. For me, it's just lovely to have a product, because I'm in a service industry. I'm in a, you know, life coaching and business mentoring, and to have a book, it feels like I've got something, a product, something, and I give it away in my packages. Or at networking events or on my website. It's been such a helpful tool. And I've also left it at a few places I frequent, like I go to a massage healing center, so I've left them a few copies in the waiting room. I've given it to libraries. So it's just really nice to have that book.
So everything that you just said, I really want to make sure that people heard that, because that's a self-marketing skill that I think a lot of people don't pick up on. Is, you know, when you write a book, you need to put it in the places that you think it will be helpful to people. You know, it's a lot of it is, you know, like Fiona said, she put it in the massage parlor that she goes to. She puts it, you know, she takes it to networking events and meetings, and, you know, hands it out as part of her life coaching services. Those kinds of things is, you know, how you get more readers. And unless you're willing to do that and kind of openly share your work, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get people who will become your followers.
Well, that's very true. So I was very lucky to get it into bookstores, all good bookstores across Australia. The only way you can do that in Australia is if you go through a publishing house. So I was very pleased to get it into some of the major stores here. And of course, then I go around there and I've got a photo and I'm in the store. So, you know, it's all publicity and being comfortable with promoting your book. I also offer a coaching session with my book. So if anyone comes onto my site and buys the book, they get a Skype session with me. And that's another great way for coaches to promote their services. And
was the free Skype session, is that only if you're located in Australia, or is that for anyone anywhere?
At the moment, it's only for Australia, given our time difference, and also, I guess, my work-life balance, because I have a 14-year-old. But that will change.
That makes sense, though. That's also another important point, is having a work-life balance. You can't, write and be a life coach and do all of these things all the time without running yourself into the ground very quickly.
Yes, I really have to walk the walk and talk the talk myself. So I made sure the following summer, when my book was already out, that I had a really nice time and went to the beach and looked after myself and gave myself a good pat on the back. And then people ask me, are you going to write another book? And it's sort of a bit like, you're going to have another child? I'll think about it. The first one was, I'll think about it. So I always say that when I feel I have something to share, then I'll write about it.
That's beautiful advice. So one thing, I know that Fiona has to go to another meeting because she is so terribly busy and amazing. The one question that we ask every single guest that comes on the podcast is, if you had one piece of advice to offer to aspiring authors, what would it be?
One piece of advice. Go with your gut. There's a lot of elements in creating a book. A lot of elements. So really listen to your gut. And at times you can piss people off. I mean, I did have someone originally do my cover and I wasn't happy with it at all. I had someone take photographs of me and I wasn't happy with it at all. And I could have been a people pleaser and just been quiet, but I went with my gut and said, no, I don't feel this is right. And so that would be my one piece of advice.
That's fantastic advice. So, to everybody listening, go with your gut. And sometimes that's going to make people upset. No matter what you decide, there's going to be someone who gets crabby at you for some reason. But that's important to know that you shouldn't back down, because if you know what you want and what you're doing, then stick with it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Fiona, for your amazing advice, and also for your patience while I've been sitting in the dark over here in Colorado.
Oh, thank you. It's been lovely to talk to you both today. It really has.
Thank you so much for coming, Fiona. And for our listeners, you can find everything about Fiona and her book, Stuck in a Rut, at lifebalancecoach.com.au. There are links to her very informative blog, as well as links to purchase her book. There's also a fantastic offer for her book if you're located in Australia. I know a few of our listeners are. Not only do you get a signed copy, but you also get a free coaching session and a workbook. This is if you're in Australia only, so for the rest of us, her wonderful book is also available on Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble. To take part in Fiona's genius at 140 characters or less, her Twitter handle is @CraigFiona. As always, we will include all of these direct links right in the show notes. And thank you, Annalisa, for powering through this terrible ice storm today to give a little bit more of your great writing advice.
Powering through.
Annalisa is the resident writing coach in the Writing Gym. She helps writers start, finish, and bring to publication writing in all genres. And she weathered through an ice storm to be here with you guys, so you should definitely give her a call. If you love the Writing Gym podcast, we'd love to have you join us in the actual Writing Gym. There's no place better to get your writing at full strength. So if you're interested, make sure and check it out. We're doing limited subscriptions and enrollment is open now at www.writing-gym.com. The Writing Gym even features a personal trainer, which is me, to help keep you accountable to your writing goals. We don't count your calories, but we do count your words. To see what we're up to this week, go to writing-gym.com. Don't forget the dash. And thank you so much for joining us to pump up your writing here on the Writing Gym podcast. Make sure and leave us a fantastic rating if you enjoyed the podcast. And don't forget to let us know how Fiona's fantastic interview helped your writing journey in the comment section. Your 5-star rating will help other aspiring authors find this fantastic podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes and download all of the takeaways and this week's freebie on how to get out of your writing rut at www.writing-gym.com/weeklywritingreps. And speaking of freebies, don't forget to enter our contest at www.writing-gym/contest to win a free writing coaching session. The secret code this week is Dean Koontz. Thank you all so much for listening, and happy writing.
This has been the Writing Gym Podcast with Andy Brixey and Annalisa Parent. To join the Writing Gym, visit www.writing-gym.com.